Today, I would like to talk about sustainability and the transition towards sustainability and democracy. And I will try to show, to discuss with you, which is the relationship in between the two. And I will try to show that this relationship is very important. In order to do it, I have to say something about transition and about democracy, the two terms of my speech. I think that for this audience it's quite clear that transition is a change in the system and that the system is a hyper-complex system. We have to really well understand what is the meaning of saying we have to face a change in a hyper-complex system. The issue is that the complex system cannot be changed simply with a choice of one center. There is no kind of places where somebody has a will can orient the system in one direction or the other. Therefore, we talk about the transition as a period in which many different people are doing different things. And in the way in which they do it, we can have a kind of learning process that permit in a certain period to arrive to this radical change that we are looking for. And also if, as we do in this conference, we talk about design, we have to know that there is no one center that can design this kind of transition, exactly because it's a very complex issue. But we have to imagine a kind of a collective social intelligence that could be, as a whole, capable, hopefully, to move toward a more sustainable and resilient society. So this is a very important issue for me to keep in mind. We are talking about a change of something that cannot be directed by any singular identity. When we talk about democracy, of course, we can say a lot of different things. And I will capture only the ones that are more useful for the sake of the discussion that I want to do with you. So we can say that the democracy is a political regime that is needed for the transition, for some reason that I would like to show. And I would also try to prove that if we imagine a sustainable society that should be lasting time for a long time, because we are talking about hundreds of thousands of years, whatever of sustainable society we could imagine has to be resilient. And exactly this resilient is something that could be related to democracy. If I feel that there is a need to talk about this issue, the relation between democracy and sustainability, is because, in my view, for several reasons and several motivations, democracy in this moment is under attack. And I can really tell you that I'm quite concerned for this. And this is the motivation why I choose to talk with you about this topic. I will choose in between the different motivations of this attack, the ones that are more related to our discussion about the transition towards sustainability. Somebody says that democracy should be overcome mainly for this reason. The argument is, given that we have an urgency, given that the problems are so big, we can imagine that democracy, that by definition is a very complex way of taking decision, could be not enough efficient and not enough fast. And therefore, the idea is that we should overcome democracy to move toward other systems that could be supposed to be more effective in taking their own decision and faster in taking their own decision. And normally, when we talk about systems that should be in this way more effective and more fast, we talk about more authoritarian regime. That means regime that try to centralize all the power somewhere where the idea is to have a direction, and the direction can be followed in a quick and follow way because there is a very clear program and strategy. Well, I would like to say that beyond the ethical motivation that make me personally refuse these ideas, and also beyond the political motivation for which I refuse this idea, I would like to try to discuss with you the fact that these statements are substantially wrong. And they are substantially wrong because all the vertical hierarchical system and therefore all the authoritarian regime are intrinsically fragile and stupid. Whereas suppose the democratic one could be resilient and intelligent. Of course, this is a kind of a very dry sentence, and I have to articulate it. So the authoritarian regime, as we have said, as a political system where in the name of optimization and efficacy, we try to reduce the complexity. And this is one point. We try to simplify the system and we try to centralize the decisions, as we said before. But in the moment in which we simplify the system becomes more fragile because we reduce variety and redundancy that are the key element of every possible resilient system. And at the same time, I use this term stupid, not in the banal way, but in the way in which we talk about the system and when the system are intelligent. And the system are intelligent when they have the possibility to learn from the experience and in some way to generate more knowledge. And the vertical hierarchical system, as everybody can see, are not capable to really understand where they are because the sensor that they have in the environment are so far away from the place where people take decisions. And in this way also, they are not capable to optimize the possibility to use the energy and the knowledge and the entrepreneurship that we can have spread into the society. I suppose the democratic regime, at least in principle, at least as a tendency, are ecosystems of human interactions in which there are two main elements that for us in this discussion are very important. They permit, not only permit and tolerate, but also they in some way support a variety of ideas. Democracy is democracy because we have a variety of ideas. And at the same time, another point of democracy is that these decisions are not centralized in few places or in one places, but are by definition distributed in many different places. Therefore, these are the two motivations why, in my view, democracy or the democratic regime is the only one that permits us to go toward a sustainable society and then to maintain a sustainable society. First of all, because this system, for the reason that I say, are resilient. And are resilient because they support and admit diversity and redundancy that are the characteristic of every possible resilient system. The second one is that if we have to manage a very complex system, the only way to manage the complex system is to distribute these complexities at the nodes. That is the contrary of what the authoritarian system do, and is what the democratic system should do. Finally, being relatively tolerant is an ecosystem where people have more possibility to express themselves. And therefore, everybody in some way could be potentially an active sensor and actuator. So the possibility to interact with the environment, to have feedback, and to generate new experiences and new knowledge. Exactly for this reason, there are a huge potentiality in the society that can express themselves. Maybe in a kind of a messy way, maybe in a contradictory way, but they have the possibility to express. And exactly because the system is not only tolerant, but create or should create environment that could be the best one to have these social energies, the possibility to express themselves, to emerge and to thrive. If we put together all this potentiality that we have in democracy, we can see that it's the environment in which what I called before a collective design capability can express itself. So in the In other words, and going back to the beginning, is the only conditions in which it's possible to imagine this kind of huge design action that is a transition towards sustainability in a complex system. Given that, unfortunately, democracy is not only under attack, but it's also in some kind of crisis. So in my view, for the reason that I said, I think that what is in crisis are not the main principle that I try to summarize in an environment in which different ideas can thrive and in which decisions are taken in different nodes. There is a crisis because democracy is a human construction, and the way in which we try to approximate the ideal of democracy, so the process of democratizations, has been done in the past century on the basis of what was the way to organize our society and the way in which the human being of the last century was thinking and behaving. Given that, as we know, and we repeat every time, everything is changing so fast, it's obvious that also the structures on which democracy has been in some way implemented in the past centuries are in crisis now. And therefore, there is a huge necessity to develop something that some people call democratic experimentation. That, in my view, means to keep the main principle that I was summarizing before, but to see in which way this possibility to promote the diversity of idea, to give to everybody the possibility to express their own idea, and the possibility to generate, to invent some way to solve the problem and use the opportunity that we have can be supported. And this experiment means, in my view, of course, we knew mainly some way, 2 or 3 different ways of considering how democracy can be organized. I will not now enter in detail. As maybe you have noted, I'm not saying democracy is voting. It could be also voting, but it's more, I use the term an ecosystem of initiatives that happens in the society, but what has to have the result is to have a variety of ideas and to have a spread in the center of decision. And therefore, there is the need to imagine a new way of doing it. But beyond a specific experiment on how to use also the new technologies to develop new idea of democracy and new practice in democracy, I think that there is another point that is very linked to what we discussed in a conference like this one, where the objective is what design can design in terms of product service system to move towards sustainability. And it's the idea of the distributed system. In some way, and I'm very sure about it, one of the motivations of the crisis of democracy is that the hyper-centralized socio-technical system in some way appeal to people as something that cannot be object of democratic discussion. So to have democratic discussion, we need to have decisions that are taken near to the people. Therefore, there is a shift in the power that has to move toward the people. So from the big state and the big organization, the big corporations, towards something that is more, that is nearer to the everyday life of the people. And if we don't have this possibility, in some way, we and the people in general have the impression that nothing can be decided. So I see a very strong convergence in between the discussion about the new way in which democracy can express itself in the contemporary society and the transition of the socio-technical system toward the distributed socio-technical system that is one of the key issues about the transition towards sustainability. So to conclude, I think that the democratic experiments that in my view are desperately needed to regenerate democracy in the sense that I said before, ask for distributed socio-technical system. But at the same time, I think that we will not really have the sustainable, resilient, distributed system if we don't do also some democratic experiments. In other words, to conclude, there is the link between democratic experiment and distributed system implementation is a double link. You cannot have democratic experimentation if you don't have also distributed system. And in my view, we cannot have distributed system if we don't have also some democratic experimentation. And this is also written in my book, so you can look at it. And thanks a lot for listening to me.